This is No Operating Manual, a podcast about building healthcare companies when there's no one clear path and no operations manual. My guest today, Hafeezah Muhammad, spent years inside large organizations learning the logistics of scale. When Hafeezah's son experienced a mental health crisis, she struggled to find care for him, specifically because he was on Medicaid. So in 2021, she founded Backpack Healthcare, a mental health clinic that operates across multiple states, serving children and families and accepting a variety of insurance, including Medicaid. Hafeezah, welcome to No Operating Manual.
Thank you so much, Erin. It's so great to be here.
So let's start from the beginning. You left a senior executive career to enter really one of the hardest spaces to build a business, pediatric mental health. For those who are underserved and on Medicaid, it's kind of a relentless pursuit. So tell me how you started to build on that work and to build Backpack.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I did leave an executive career to go into the startup world. And one of the things I really wanted to start is how do I ensure that I'm building it the right way and ensuring that I brought the right clinical team around me to help support the build, and then to ensure that every decisions that we make, the technology that we built, the processes that we design were designed from a clinical mind so that we're able to build an organization that's clinically sound. And I always take my viewpoint as a parent to ensure that it's important that if every one of those children that are coming into Backpack would definitely be like my child, right? And what type of care would I want to deliver from my child and my family? And those are the lens of how I built the company, is focusing on what I would like as a mom. And I have high expectations. So those are some of the things that I work around.
So there's one thing to build a clinic, right, and have all the clinical folks in tow. It's another thing to build within a really highly regulated space like healthcare and especially Medicaid. So how did that work? How did you start to unravel and unlayer that?
One thing I felt that worked for me is that not having a lot of information about the field. So every information I received, I questioned it. Is this really true, really accurate? So a lot of research, because I didn't have any bias whatsoever about the field. I just really came into it eyes wide open and being more open to the possibilities, right? So some of the things that I've been told, have been accurate, is that it's very hard to bill in Medicaid. It's a very complex. And I'm like, well, I love challenges. So why would I want to go any other route to do something that's not going to be challenging? And I get a reward if I'm able to break that challenge. And that's one of the main reasons why, I built in such a complex environment.
Got it. So the name Backpack kind of creates a visual of children carrying things. How did that shape the idea of the type of company that you wanted to build?
So if I take a step back, when we initially launched in 2021, we were You, Me. So we were you and me in it together was the name that we came up with. And over the few years, we made 2 acquisitions, which was Hurdle Health and as well as She Health, to be able to combine forces. And as I started early, there was always questions about how do I spell You, Me, healthcare? And the pronunciation it definitely varied based on who was spelling the name. So I wanted something to showcase that we are a combined company. It's something that's new, it's innovative. I wanted something that was easily rememberable, whether you're an adult or a child, that you can remember, something that everyone can use or have used in their life. And I had a story from one of my executives that told me that one of his bosses said, everyone walks around with an invisible backpack. And when we were going to rebrand the names, we had the most craziest names out there. And I got to the point where I was like, I don't care what we call it at this point. I just want something to be something that kids can enjoy, that people can be attracted to, they can remember. I'm like, let's just call it Backpack. And everyone was like, oh my gosh, that's a really great name. And that's how we came up with the name Backpack Healthcare. And the goal is that everyone walks around with an invisible backpack, and our goal is to help them lighten the load.
That is very true. So in previous interviews, you described yourself as someone who's deeply interested in AI and technology as tools for social change. The thing with healthcare, and especially with mental health, it's an intensely human process. So how do you pull those things together and not at odds?
So when I think about AI, I think about our clinicians and the administrative burden that they deliver and they have to go through every single week. So I would just think about it that, sometimes per week you see 15 to 20 patients per week. And you're really just taking on all of that emotional drain of everything they're talking about with their life. You're going through your own personal struggles. But after you spend that time, meeting with those patients, and you have to spend another, 15, 20 hours documenting the conversation. And that's taking away time from your life, from your family. And when I think about AI, is that how do we help ensure our clinicians have more time for themselves and for their family by reducing the administrative burden? And those are the things that AI can do. And one thing I'm really proud of is that every AI solution that was designed at Backpack was designed by our clinicians and their input about what's going to make their lives easier.
How does AI specifically work with Backpack?
So
Are we
some of the
talking ambient? Are we talking, just scribes or something like that?
Yeah, some of those things are like scribes where they can help generate a session note for them and in a structured session note. One of them is being able to help generate treatment plans. Operational one that I think is my favorite, everyone thinks is very boring, is like a no-show prediction. How do we predict the likelihood of someone is going to show up to an appointment? Because if we're able to predict a no-show, which I've heard early on in my career that kids and families on Medicaid don't show up to appointments. I wanted to ensure that they were able to show up to appointments and we can find out why they're not showing up and how do we engage them so that they can get healthy. So we have a no-show prediction that can predict whether or not a patient is going to show up with a 95% accuracy, and then we can help, special engagement to help support them.
And so with that special engagement, do you get more engagement then? Are you able to kind of pull in those kids that maybe aren't going to show, or
Yeah,
help them to make sure
absolutely.
it's easier?
So the
Okay,
industry no-show is like 20 to 30%, and our no-show rate is only 7%.
great. That's
Yeah.
incredible. Talking about how obviously AI and tech can help, but do you feel like it could get in the way?
I feel that some of
The-
the ways that AI can get in the way is that if people leverage AI to be an AI therapist, I feel that, that's something that I feel that therapy is a very human experience. And if people are leveraging AI to replace therapists, that's not something that I support. There are ways that you can augment and help support therapy, but that's definitely not to replace therapists and their work and the training that they do every day to be able to deliver the quality care that they do.
Okay. Okay. So no on the AI docs and yes on those supportive administrative tools. Got it.
Yes.
So you went from an executive role inside a large organization to becoming a founder, and those are really different jobs with different skill sets. What did you have to teach yourself that you weren't quite prepared for?
I think patience is one of those things. So coming from a larger organization, someone already paved the way. They have the processes, the systems, the tools in place that as you come into an organization, you can refine those tools, but there's a foundation that's set. One thing I had to teach myself was, as I mentioned, patience. How to ensure that I'm able to move the business forward with all those processes and ensuring that we're able to create those processes, but we're not spending a lot of time building out processes that slow in the work to be able to deliver high quality care. And that was a big learning experience, is that I can't delegate. I looked around and there was anyone to delegate anything to. So I had to single-handedly set up our EHR, working with, there was like no tech to be able to set up our EHR, set up our call center all single-handedly, help with the recruiting for our initial therapist. So every job, submitting the credentialing, submitting the billing. So every aspect of my company I have worked in and I have done the job. And that's why I have a broader respect for all the different roles within the organization of how difficult they are, because I've done every single one of them. And I think that was the unique part of having to teach myself that I have to roll up my sleeves and there's no delegation. It's all about me doing the work if it needs to get done.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially when you're early going. But hopefully now you've got folks in place that can help you and you don't have to do everything. I mean, knowing that you can and doing everything is completely different, obviously.
Yeah, I really have a fantastic team. And sometimes like, some of the days, like because I have like such of the vision across multiple departments, I'm able to provide support and I can tell when something is broken. So those are the benefits that I have, but I have a fantastic team.
So, kind of the flip side of that question, are there habits or instincts from your corporate world that actually worked? I mean, obviously, you said you didn't have patience, but are there instincts from that corporate world that worked against you when you were trying to build something new?
I will say that in general, some of the instincts initially was I need to have every process documented, which kind of worked against me because you just don't have time. If you're spending 20 hours documenting processes in month one, you're not really going to get anywhere because those processes are going to change in month two. And
Yeah.
that's something that worked against me. But I challenged myself to be very open to the experience and be able to turn on my alto ego and said that I've never worked in corporate America. This is my first startup to really keep my mind focused on making sure all of those misconceptions I have or some of those things that would hold me back that I kept taking out of my mind. I kept focusing on not being able to be that person. It
Yeah.
did impact me. I wasn't perfect 99% of the time, but it really was a focus and mindset shift that I had to really dedicate myself to.
Yeah, I would say process is probably, I mean, that's why the name of this podcast is No Operating Manual, right? There is no process documents, there's no operating manual for what you're doing. And so you are really making it up along the way. So someone who is very process oriented can build those processes, but like you said, it may change the next month or,
The
2 months,
next day.
whatever. Once you
Yeah.
add a new person in, it could change the entire process.
Yes, exactly.
You have used the word mompreneur, and how has a mother specifically shaped the way that you think about what these children and these families need?
I think being a mom, you tend to have the empathy and knowing my why was rooted in my own personal experience. I have a unique perspective of thinking about every mom that comes to backpack and what they go through and what they're feeling and the struggles they're feeling personally. And there's a feeling of feeling like a failure as a mom because you can't help your child. And I think that has really helped me to continue when times get tough. Because in the startup world is a very tough environment. It changes. There are times that it's volatile and having that moment of thinking about, that mom who's going to come to backpack that I don't know, that I represent her and the decisions that we make or those that represent that mom or even the dad, because we do see quite a bit of single dads as well. So there's just like that parent. I wish we can say parentpreneur, but I don't think that even is like a new term, that's a term.
Doesn't have the
But it's,
same zing.
yeah, same meaning, but like just making sure that leads the way. And knowing that, being a mom, it's like, and building a company is very hard, right? Because you're spending time away from your kids that need you and being able to ensure that how do I strategically and spend time with them that matters to help support them so that they're able to be, strong adults like what I've been given by my mom and my dad.
So, are they seeing that with your work in backpack? Do they see that that drive and the time and all that kind of stuff to say, "Oh, look, I am investing back into, other parents as they're going through this journey too?"
Absolutely. So something unique happened because I feel guilty all the time as a mom. Like I'm not spending enough time. I'm not doing enough. Any parent probably goes through that, especially a working mom. And my son sent me a TikTok video and says like, tell your mom she's awesome. And I tear it up. And I'm like, do you really think I'm an awesome mom? And he was like, yeah, mommy, you're so resilient. You never give up. You're so nice and you're so kind to us. And he was just telling me the things that I never, even some of the vocabulary he was using, I was like, wow, you're really paying attention. And that really made me feel very special that he's noticing the work that I'm doing. And he spent a lot of time with me on the road and trips. So he kind of sees it from a different lens. But I think what's beautiful is seeing my 6 and my 3-year-old daughters. When my daughter was like, hey, hi, this is Hafeezah Muhammad with Backpack Healthcare. And they're pretending to be me and taking my makeup and getting ready for their meetings. That's what they're saying. And they sit in front of their computers and they're pretending they're on a Zoom call. And it's just always like exciting to see that as I worry about how they're feeling, like this is their norm. They don't have anyone else or another life to compare it to.
Yeah.
And that's why they enjoy it because they don't know what the opposite options are.
Yeah, this is the only norm that they've seen. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's fun. Switching gears a little bit, fundraising for pediatric mental health, especially those serving the underserved and Medicaid families, is not the most glamorous pitch. So, how do you make investors see what you see from an investment perspective?
You're so right. It's definitely not the most glamorous pitch because the misconception is that you can't make any money in Medicaid, right? And that's something that, that's a misconception. But at the same time, Medicaid is the largest payer for behavioral health, paying over $66 billion a year. And as a capitalist, I'm saying like, wow, there's $66 billion that's being paid out, but there's no unicorn or any large private organization, where is that money going? So being able to explain to them that, hey, this is something that's fundable, but also more recently being able to share that there's a lot of nonprofits who are operating in this space who have combined revenues of billions of dollars combined and $500 million in combined revenue, even though they're not in the private markets or for profit. It just shows that there's a possibility that you can build a business. Just no one has been, uh, let's say, patient enough to do it or even want to do it, right? And my dream is to build the first billion-dollar business in Medicaid as a private company. And that's something that keeps me motivated to prove a lot of people wrong as well. Tell me I can't do something and I'm going to prove to you that I can.
So, I mean, how do you see that play? I mean, again, Medicaid had massive cuts, right? People are losing their Medicaid coverage right now. So how do you see that changing over the next, 3-5 years in terms of Medicaid coverage and backpacks goals?
So one thing I'm very proud of is that being in a space that's very from a bipartisan perspective, that's one thing everyone agrees on. Pediatric mental health, children mental health, and whole and family mental health is something that should not be ignored. So some of those things that with the cuts where people see the highlights of, oh, Medicaid is being cut, there were some protections in there. So children who are 19 or younger are protected from the cuts. Children who are in foster care are protected from the cuts. And parents who have kids younger than 18 are also protected from the cuts. So the core of who Backpack is, the patients that we serve have essentially been protected from, the cuts in Medicaid. And, this is not our first Medicaid cut that we've gone through. This is going to probably be the third one in the last 5 years because there have been different variations of it. So this is not new for us, but I'm very proud that that our leadership do believe that children and families need to be protected from these cuts. And, they have been able to do that with the bill.
Right now, there are a lot of children who aren't getting the mental health care they need, regardless of status, Medicaid status or whatever. If Backpack is working the way that you plan and dream it in next 10 years, what does that actually look like?
If Backpack works in the next 10 years, my vision is that the need for adult mental health services declines. Because children, if you're able to give them the tools and their family the tools early on, it becomes a part of riding the bike. So they learn coping mechanisms to help support them, various things to help make them better. And if you're able to give a young adult or young child, because 60% of all mental illnesses start by age 16. So the sooner that you can provide early intervention, the more successful adulthood would be. And I feel like that's the impact that I would love to be able to drive, and people know that you can get access to care when you need it.
I love that. What advice would you give other founders who are building new healthcare companies, especially within more highly regulated areas like Medicaid?
One thing I would say that you will get rejected a lot, but your why has to be greater than the how. And if your why is not greater than the how, then it might not be the right industry for you to build in, but it's going to be the most rewarding industry if you stick it out, because it's very hard for a competitor to make new entry into this field. So you always will have first mover advantage, but also ensure that you bring along others with you to ensure that you can ensure you're not the one-stop shop for those who need help.
Your why being servicing the families and the children who need mental health support, and how you're doing it is kind of building piece by piece and block by block. So Hafeezah, thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to seeing where Backpack goes.
Thank you so much for your time. And it was so great meeting you. And I look forward to talking to you in the future.
Thanks for listening to No Operating Manual. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to support the podcast, please leave a rating and a review, and don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. No Operating Manual is hosted and produced by Aaron O'Brien of Chemistry, a healthcare marketing and communication advisory. Visit our website at choosechemistry.com.